The envelope was already on the table when I walked in. My brother didn't hand it to me. He just glanced at it, the way you'd nod toward a parking ticket someone else needed to deal with, and said, "We need that signed before we cut the cake." His girlfriend, seated next to him, adjusted the strap of her dress and smiled at me with the specific patience of someone who has been told this would take 5 minutes. My mother was looking at the floral arrangement. My father was refilling his own coffee. That was my welcome to my grandmother's estate reading dinner. 1 envelope. 4 words. Nobody in that room who was supposed to love me could look me in the eye. We were in the private dining room of a hotel in downtown Vancouver. My grandmother had booked it herself, 2 weeks before she died, which was the most her thing she had ever done. White tablecloths, candles she would have called too fussy. A window that looked out over the water. 8 of us around a table built for 12. My grandmother's chair sat empty at the head of it. Nobody had the courage to move it or sit in it, which I found quietly telling. My brother's name doesn't matter right now. I've been calling him by a nickname since we were kids, and in my head that's still what he is. What matters is that he's 37, and he spent the last decade convincing everyone around him that managing our grandmother's affairs made him the default head of the family. He drove her to appointments, he handled her banking after she turned 80. He installed himself as the first call she made when anything went wrong. What he didn't do was actually sit with her. He didn't drive up to Kelowna when she got the diagnosis. He didn't fly in for her last birthday. I did both of those things, quietly, without telling anyone, because she asked me to, and because she was my grandmother and I would have done it without being asked. She passed in February. She was 83. She had been a sharp, funny, privately sentimental woman who ran a small property management company for 40 years, built it out of nothing after my grandfather died in 1989, and left behind an estate that nobody in our family had ever thought to fully quantify, because she kept her finances the way she kept her feelings, present and available to the right people, and completely opaque to everyone else. The envelope contained a document. I opened it. It was a deed of release, 6 pages, pre-tabbed with those yellow sticky arrows. What it released was my interest in a property my grandmother had transferred into my name 18 months before she died. A commercial property on West Georgia Street. She had done it quietly, through her lawyer, without announcing it at any family dinner. She called me on a Sunday in October, the way she sometimes did when she wanted to say something important without the performance of it being a big conversation, and she said, "I've put the building in your name. It's yours. Don't let them talk you out of it." I asked her why she hadn't told anyone. She said, "Because I know what they'll do if I do." She was right. She always was. "It's a formality," my brother said, cutting his steak with a focus that didn't quite hide what was underneath it. The estate lawyer flagged it as a loose end. "You don't know anything about commercial property. You're not in a position to manage it. This just cleans up the structure." "What structure?" I asked. "The trust. The overall asset picture. It simplifies everything." His girlfriend, who has a background in financial planning and deploys it at the dinner table like a utility knife, folded her hands and said, "We've already had it reviewed. The language is boilerplate. It's really just an administrative thing, then it won't take long to read." I said. My mother reached for the breadbasket. "Here is what I want you to understand before I tell you what happened next. I grew up in this family as the one who turned out fine. My brother was the one who turned out exceptional, or at least that was the story. He was older. He was louder. He had a plan at 22 that he talked about at every Christmas dinner for 6 years until it half materialized, and everyone agreed that counted. I was the younger one who got good grades without anyone noticing, who worked through university in Burnaby without anyone offering to help, who graduated and moved to Toronto for a job, and built a life that my family understood mostly in terms of what it was not. It was not close to home. It was not the kind of thing with a clear title. It was not impressive in the way that scanned quickly at family dinners. What it was mine. I had spent 8 years building a logistics software company. I started it at 26, in a sublease on King Street, with 2 people I trusted and a client list of exactly 1. By the time I was 30, we had contracts with 4 of the top 8 freight carriers operating in Eastern Canada. By 33, we were in 11 provinces and territories. Last spring, a private equity firm out of Montreal acquired us for $47 million. I walked away with the majority stake payout, cleared my Toronto mortgage, and moved back to BC because my grandmother was sick, and I wanted to be close. My family thought I was still in mid-level tech consulting. I had not corrected them. Partly because explaining myself required a level of energy I'd stopped being willing to spend on people who had already decided what I was, and partly because I'd needed to know whether the correction would change anything. I'd already guessed the answer. I wanted to be certain. So when I sat at that table with the envelope in my hands, they saw exactly what they expected to see. The quiet one. The one without equity in anything that mattered. The daughter who had moved away and came back only when things got hard. The sister who had never quite stepped up the way he had. They didn't know that the building they wanted me to sign away was currently leased to a national retail chain, generating $42,000 a month in commercial rent, and had been appraised at $3.8 million by an independent firm I had commissioned 6 weeks ago. They didn't know I had already spoken to a lawyer. "I'm not signing this tonight," I said. I closed the envelope and set it down, and I won't be signing it without a proper appraisal and a fair offer, Maya. My mother said my name the way she always did when she thought I was being difficult, which was a tone she reserved specifically for me, and never for my brother, which is something I had long since stopped pretending not to notice. That building has carrying costs, my property tax, insurance, management fees. You've never paid a cent of any of it. I've never been asked to, because we didn't want to put that on you. You mean you didn't want to tell me about it? His girlfriend leaned forward slightly. The estate is complex. There are interconnected assets. Your brother has been managing the overall picture for 3 years. This is about streamlining things so the family can move forward together. Moving forward together by having me sign over $3.8 million in real estate for nothing? The table went quiet. My brother set down his fork. He looked at me the way he used to look at me when we were teenagers, and I said something at dinner that he hadn't pre-approved. Something that shifted the dynamic in a way that didn't serve him. I had seen that look so many times. I had spent years trying to understand what I'd done to earn it. "We can challenge the transfer," he said, his voice lowering. Not a threat exactly. Something that wanted to sound like reason. "Grandma was 82 when she made it. There's documentation of cognitive decline. If you push this, we'll have the capacity question reviewed. And I promise you, a unilateral asset transfer of that size, made 18 months before death with no family disclosure, is going to draw scrutiny." The room got very still. My mother spoon touched her soup bowl and didn't move. My father put his napkin on the table. I sat with what my brother had just said for a moment. Not because it surprised me, because my grandmother had warned me it was coming, word for word, and I wanted to take one breath and remember that she had also told me what to do. She called me on a Thursday in December 4 months before she died. It was 11 at night, and her voice was the particular calm of someone who has been turning something over for a long time, and has finally made peace with all of it. She said, "He's going to say I wasn't competent. He's going to try to use the last few years against me." She paused. "I've already had the transfer notarized with 2 independent witnesses, and a capacity assessment conducted by my family physician and a geriatric specialist. Both on the same day. Their reports are filed with my lawyer." Another pause. "I've also updated the estate documents. There is a no contest provision. Anyone who challenges the transfer forfeits their share of the residual estate. Make sure you know that when the time comes." I reached into my bag. Not the envelope I'd set down. The other one. The one I'd brought up from my room before dinner. I put it on the table. It was a standard manila folder, but it was thick, and it landed with a sound that made my brother's girlfriend stop mid-reach for her wine. "What's that?" my mother asked. "Documentation," I said. I let my brother take it. I watched his face. The first document was the independent appraisal. $3.8 million, certified, dated 6 weeks ago. His jaw moved once. The second document was the capacity assessment. 2 physicians, same day, unambiguous conclusions. His jaw stopped moving. The third document was a summary prepared by my lawyer. It laid out the no contest provision in plain language. Any legal challenge to the West Georgia transfer would automatically trigger a full audit of estate assets and trustee conduct for the preceding 5 years. It would also result in the challenger forfeiting any claim to the residual estate, which, per my grandmother's updated will, included her Kelowna property and her investment accounts, totaling approximately $900,000. "The no contest clause was triggered the moment you mentioned challenging the transfer," I said. "My lawyer has already been notified." My brother closed the folder. He set it down very deliberately. His girlfriend looked at it, then at him, then back at me. I watched her shift gears behind her eyes. She had been running the room since we sat down, and I watched her recalibrate, pivot, switch to a different approach with the smoothness of someone who had done it before. "Look," she said, and her voice went warm. In a way her voice hadn't been warm all evening. "You've done a lot of work here, I can see that, but you have to understand your brother has given 3 years of his life to your family's affairs. He's been the one showing up, making the calls, doing the administrative work that nobody wants to do. What you're describing as mismanagement, we see as exactly that, management. Hard, unpaid, unacknowledged management, and your grandmother, God love her, wasn't always seeing the full picture at the end." She tilted her head. "Sign tonight, take a fair goodwill payment, and we all walk away without this getting ugly. Or push back, spend the next 2 years in BC Supreme Court, and find out what litigation actually costs." I thought about a specific afternoon when I was 14, and I had won a regional math competition in Surrey and come home with a certificate and a $100 savings. bond. My mother had said, "That's wonderful, honey," and gone back to reading about my brother's volleyball tournament in the next weekend schedule. I stood in the front hallway with my certificate and thought, okay, noted. I thought about the Christmas I was 28, the year I'd just signed our second major carrier contract, when I sat at this family's tables and listened to my brother talk for 40 minutes about a real estate deal was considering, and when my mother asked how things were going for me, I said pretty well, and my father said, "Still doing the tech stuff?" and moved on before I answered. I thought about every meal, every phone call, every family group chat where his news was news and my news was background. Enough. I'm not signing, I said, and I'm not negotiating tonight. My brother stood up. He walked to the door of the private dining room, and I heard the soft click of the lock. It was the sound that changed everything, not because it was physically threatening, but because it was deliberate, and deliberate meant this had been planned, and planned meant I was not the only one who had come to this dinner prepared. "Sit back down," he said. "Unlock the door." His girlfriend had my folder and was moving through it quickly. Not panicking. Cataloging. Her voice when she spoke had gone professional in the way that signaled she wasn't speaking to me anymore. She was building a position. "The no contest clause you're referencing has conditions," she said. "It applies to challenges filed in probate court. What your brother said tonight was a private statement in a family conversation. It's not a legal filing. It doesn't trigger anything." She set the folder down. "What does create a problem is what you've done here. Commissioning a dossier on a trustee, making allegations in writing, distributing them to third parties. That's defamation exposure. That's interference with fiduciary duty. That's a threat. That's a legal opinion I didn't ask for," I said. She smiled the way people smile when they've decided they've already won. "You have two options. Sign the release, accept $50,000 as a goodwill payment. The appraisal says $3.8 million. Or we pursue this, and you spend your payout on lawyers instead of whatever you were planning to do with it." She paused. "And yes, we know about the sale. We know about the company. We've known for 3 months. We were hoping you'd be reasonable." That was the moment I understood what this dinner actually was. It wasn't an ambush designed for someone they underestimated. It was an ambush designed for someone they had, finally, recently, started to take seriously. And that changed the math in a way they hadn't accounted for, because someone who takes you seriously starts watching you, and someone who starts watching you tends to show you exactly what they're willing to do. I had bought this hotel 4 months ago. Not this room. The whole building. It had come up through a commercial property investment group I joined after the acquisition. A mid-sized boutique hotel in downtown Vancouver, well-reviewed, underperforming financially, available because the previous ownership group had dissolved. I'd looked at the numbers and the location, and made an offer that closed in November. My grandmother had known. She'd laughed when I told her and said, "Of course you did." As the property owner, I had commissioned a full security review of every event space in the building before opening the rooms for private bookings. Standard practice. 4 cameras in this room alone, positioned by the security firm we'd contracted, synced to a cloud archive I controlled. Everything that had happened in this room in the last 90 minutes was recorded, including my brother locking the door, including his girlfriend's description of their options for me, including the specific threats made by both of them. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and put a business card on the table. It said Larimer Property Group, and below that, Managing Partner, and below that, my name. My brother picked it up. I watched him read it twice. "Larimer Property Group," I said. "Acquired this hotel in November. I own this building." I let that sit for exactly 1 breath, which means the security footage from this room is my property. My lawyer received a copy of it 40 minutes ago, sent from my phone before I came up for dinner. I stood. "You locked the door of a room in a building I own and issued financial threats to compel a signature on a legal document. In British Columbia, that's extortion under the Criminal Code. Section 346. And because my lawyer received the footage by email across provincial lines, there's a federal dimension to it as well." His girlfriend was very still. "The building booking," I continued, "was filed as a private family dinner. You used the room to conduct legal business, specifically to execute a deed of release. That misrepresentation voids the event contract and puts you in breach of the venue terms." I paused. "My lawyer is also in possession of the estate documents, the no contest clause, and the capacity assessments. The estate trustee's conduct for the last 5 years is now under independent review, beginning tomorrow morning." My brother said something I couldn't quite hear. "I'm going to unlock the door," I said, "and I'm going to go downstairs. What happens next is up to you. If you want to talk to my lawyer about a legitimate offer for the West Georgia property, fair market value, clean transaction, I'm open to it. If you want to pursue litigation, the footage and the documents and the no contest forfeiture are all already in motion." I walked to the door. I unlocked it. I pulled it open and the sound of the hotel came in, the low music from the lobby, the distant sound of people living their ordinary Friday evening. I was in the hallway when I heard my mother behind me. Maya. I turned. She was standing just inside the doorframe. She wasn't following me. She was just standing there, and her hands were in front of her, and she looked like someone who has been watching a situation develop for years, and has only just now let herself see where it ended. Why didn't you tell us? She said. About any of it. The company, the sale, this place. I thought about a lot of things in the second before I answered. I thought about the savings bond in the front hallway. I thought about still doing the tech stuff. I thought about every time I had sat at a family table and been careful and small and easy and undemanding, waiting for something I had eventually stopped being able to name. Because I needed to find out, I said, whether any of it would have mattered to you. She didn't say anything. It's okay, I said. Now I know. I walked down the hall to the elevator. My operations manager was in the lobby when I came out. She's been with the property group since I brought her on from the Vancouver office of my old company, and she had the particular expression she wore when a situation had gone precisely according to plan. And she was too professional to say so directly. She handed me a coffee. It was from the hotel's kitchen, which is excellent, and which was one of the things that had made me decide to buy the place. How'd it go? She said. Buy the book, I said. Estate lawyer confirmed the no contest trigger? He'll file the review notice first thing Monday. She nodded. She pulled out her phone. Your brother's girlfriend sent an email to the contact address on your business card 4 minutes ago. It's from a personal account. She's asking for a meeting. I drank my coffee. The lobby was warm, and the Friday evening crowd moved around us. Guests checking in, a couple by the fireplace, a group of women at the bar celebrating something. Forward it to my lawyer, I said. Already did. We walked out through the front entrance onto the street. The air was cool. The way Vancouver gets in early spring, clean and a little damp, with the smells of the water somewhere behind it. The mountains were invisible in the dark, but I knew they were there. My operations manager had booked us a car. We stood outside while it came around. What do you want to do about the West Georgia property? She asked. Nothing tonight, I said. The independent review will establish the correct value. After that, if my brother wants to negotiate legitimately, I'll negotiate legitimately. If he doesn't, the estate proceeds without him. And the hotel? I looked up at the building. It was lit from within, warm and entirely ordinary, full of people who had no idea that anything unusual had happened one floor above them. The hotel stays, I said. I got in the car. I didn't lie awake that night replaying it. I've thought about why, and I think it's this. I had spent a very long time being careful in that family. Careful not to need too much. Careful not to ask for things I wasn't going to get. Careful to stay legible to people who had decided early what I was, and found my actual life inconvenient to that story. I had been so careful for so long that I'd started to confuse the carefulness with something else, with acceptance, with not minding, with being fine. I minded. I had minded for years. What my grandmother understood, what she had seen in me from the time I was a kid doing puzzles at her kitchen table while the rest of the family watched hockey, was not just that I was capable. She had seen that I was patient, that I understood the difference between the moment you have something and the moment you show it, and the moment you show it, that I would wait for the right time and do it properly and not flinch. She'd said it to me once on one of those Sunday phone calls, when I was complaining about something small and she cut through it in the way she always could. She said, "You build things, sweetheart. You always have. Stop wondering if they notice and just keep building." I had, and when it finally mattered, the building held.